It's not easy being Carlos Ghosn. Even he says so. Late last year, after a decade spent working to integrate Nissan and Renault, Mr. Ghosn announced there is one key area in which he wants to decouple the two, the CEO suite. Mr. Ghosn has run both automakers since 2005 and been at the helm of Nissan since '99. But when he steps down, he wants each company to have its own CEO. It's not because he works harder than anyone else, although I might argue he probably does. He told us it's simply impossible to have someone with legitimacy from both sides. And it's that kind of legitimacy that he has spent years building. Mr. Ghosn had the trust of Renault because he was dispatched from Paris when the French company took a controlling stake in Nissan. He then earned the trust from Nissan by leading its turnaround, becoming the first person to run two Fortune Global 500 companies simultaneously. And that continues. Mr. Ghosn has been one of the industry's highest profile executives for nearly 2 decades. He vows to have fully autonomous vehicles in showrooms in 5 years and remains a strong supporter of electric vehicles. Ambitious, dedicated, driven, and always on the move. Please welcome Carlos Ghosn.
Good morning, and thank you, Jason, for that very generous and kind introduction. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that our thoughts today are with the people of Belgium after yesterday's horrific attacks in that city, and most especially with the victims and their loved ones. The effects of such senseless acts of terrorism are felt deeply here in New York and around the world. We're here today to mark our industry rite of spring, the kickoff of the New York International Auto Show. Our industry is fortunate to be coming off a year of growth that went well beyond what most of us were forecasting. It was also a year of solid growth for Nissan, with our US sales up more than 7%. In fact, Nissan was the only major brand in the United States that saw its market share grow last year. And we sold 2 of the top 10 best-selling cars in the nation, the Altima and Sentra. Also, by the end of this month, we expect our North American region to surpass 2 million sales in the fiscal year for the first time. We also expect to sell more than 2 million units in North America in calendar year 2016. Not surprisingly, our growth has coincided with the crossoverization of the US market. And there appears to be no end in sight to the remarkable growth in crossover here and around the world. US sales of the Nissan Rogue were up more than 44% last year, setting a record and moving up to 4th place in the industry's fastest growing segment. In addition, sales of the new Nissan Murano increased more than 33%. And of course, we have high expectations for the all-new Titan pickup, which has been picking up Truck of the Year awards across the media landscape. It's also worth noting that Nissan has gained steadily in passenger car sales, and we are now vying for the #2 car sales spot behind Toyota. Our car sales have been boosted by the launch of the 8th generation Nissan Maxima and by improvements throughout our business, including customer satisfaction. Just last week, the latest J.D. Power Customer Satisfaction Index showed Nissan improved more than any other automaker and now ranks 6th in the industry, ahead of our Japanese competitors. And later this morning, we've got some more excitement in store for you when we unveil the latest version of our performance champion, the Nissan GT-R, with a long list of substantial improvements. 2015 was a good year for Infiniti as well, with sales up 14%. That's a trend we see continuing this year with the launch of the Infiniti QX30 and QX60 crossovers and Q60 Sports Coupe, as well as a significant update of the Q50 Sports Sedan. So all in all, a strong year for Nissan and for the overall industry. And heading into spring, we see stable growth continuing this year at around 2% for the overall US market. Of course, if you read some of the recent commentary on our industry, you could get the impression that it's headed into a long, stormy, uneasy winter. There's been a lot of talk about disruption, about new competitors who promise a new approach to what a car can be. Much of this unease over potential disruption has resulted from the rapid emergence of new technologies and so-called mobility services, all of which are competing to establish a new vision of our industry future. In addition, these technologies are developing at a speed unfamiliar to our industry so far. Whether we're talking about autonomous drive and connected vehicle technologies, ride-sharing services, or alternative propulsion technologies, the fact is none of us knows for certain which will become mainstream. We can make some educated guess, calculated bets, and we have. But in the end, customers will decide which technologies and business plans will survive. So yes, the future is not clear. The biggest questions revolve around how these potentially disruptive changes will come about. What regulatory roadblocks will emerge? What role will tech companies play? Which of our companies will succeed or fail in addressing the coming wave of change? And which will be able to move quickly and adapt in such a rapidly changing technological landscape? I don't pretend to know all the answer to these questions, but rather than fear the disruption, I believe our industry really has no choice but to embrace it, anticipate it. I expect the global auto industry to see more changes in the next 5 years than it has in the last 20. And those changes will bring tremendous opportunities for those companies with the skills and foresight to seize them. Rather than fear tech companies' interest, I see this new competition as healthy for our industry. We have a lot to learn from them, and they have much to learn from us, which is quite clear considering all the automotive talent they have been hiring. So with that said, let me share a few thoughts of what I see on our industry long-term horizon. When I last spoke at this breakfast, it was in 2012, our industry was still focused on whether electric vehicles were part of the future. Nissan had just introduced the Leaf a year earlier, and we had sold 30,000 units. Since then, the Renault-Nissan alliance is leading the industry with more than 300,000 electric vehicles sold globally. Not as much as we had expected, but certainly a healthy start. More significantly, today, nearly every major automaker has ambitious projects underway for new EVs and other zero-emission vehicles. It's clear EVs are here to stay. The Nissan Leaf is the world's top-selling EV by far, with more than 200,000 owners today. And that's a position we intend to keep. The Leaf has also become the top Nissan vehicle in customer satisfaction, tied with the GTR. There are several reasons to be bullish about EV's future. To deal with the threat of climate change, the world is demanding that our industry invest more in zero-emission transportation. Governments around the world are imposing stricter limits on CO2 emissions, and one major response has to be electrification. But beyond environmental regulation, EV just makes sense. We have already seen within the alliance how the cost of EVs continues to go down as their economy of scale begin to inch closer to those enjoyed by the internal combustion engines. EVs are also relatively simple machines, a battery and electric motors. They require far less service, no oil changes, and they are extremely reliable. With battery technology improving and the charging infrastructure expanding in much of the world, we are nearing the turning point where EVs will become more of a mainstream option. There's been another important change since I last spoke here. In 2012, no one was talking about autonomous drive vehicles. In January, I visited Nissan Silicon Valley R&D offices in California. I spent considerable time driving around the streets of Sunnyvale, hands-free and with my eyes off the road. Autonomous drive cars that can change lanes on their own, negotiate city streets, handle the drudgery of stop-and-go traffic are coming very soon. In fact, the Renault-Nissan Alliance will launch at least 10 models with significant autonomous drive functionality by 2020. Those cars will be far more connected than those on the road today. There will be a much more personal space, an extension of ourselves, just as smartphones are today. And the EV is the perfect platform for the future of autonomous drive and connected vehicle technology, which will in turn help accelerate the adoption of EVs. The trend towards more connected cars is also critical to meet the expectation of our future buyers, those who are just getting their driver license today. The benefits of highly connected autonomous drive cars are clear. They hold the promise of making driving far safer, less stressful, more efficient, and more rewarding. And as we did with our EVs, Nissan and the Alliance will aim these future cars at the heart of the mass market. in line with our drive toward mobility for all. With each international auto show, more automakers are spelling out their visions and placing their bets in the future. And that's good. Yes, there is a lot at stake. Yes, there is a lot of uncertainty. But this is not a time to be conservative or to be cautious, because for those open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, the opportunities for our industry to grow and better serve society needs has never been greater. The pending merger of new technologies and new business models means not only new business opportunity, but ultimately a more efficient and safer transportation system at a lower cost to society. Three forces, electrification, autonomous drive, connectivity, are about to change our industry in ways we are only beginning to imagine. To me, it feels like we are at the dawn of a new spring in the auto industry. And I'm excited to see how this new era unfolds. Thank you.